Nathaniel Ford was a big deal political guy, sheriff in Missouri, who brought 6 slaves out with him to Oregon. 6 slaves, one guy to Oregon. And many of the slave owners who brought their slaves out used them for several years to develop their new farms and their donation land claim, and then freed them. And that was the case with my ancestor. But Nathaniel Ford kept his slaves almost 10 years. And so he finally, under pressure, freed Nathaniel Robin Holmes, who was the male slave, but kept his children. And Robin Holmes sued Ford for the freedom of his children. Now, it's a remarkable story. I mean, to me, Robin Holmes should be one of the most important people in Oregon history, because he is. He should be recognized as such.
Yeah.
I have no pictures of him. There's very little written record of him. He was illiterate, former slave in Missouri, but he sued Nathaniel Ford for the freedom of his children in a region, this state, which was generally hostile to African Americans, and it was at the time. And yet he prevailed in court, and he won the freedom of his children. And that court ruling by George Williams in 1853 really established that slavery was unlawful in Oregon. And Robin Holmes made this happen. And so to me, he is a heroic figure. So that's a second thing that should come out of the book, that we had heroic figures in the black community that lived in Oregon at the time because they were illiterate. Not much is known about them, but they accomplished a great deal.
Oh, yeah. And so you're talking about the Oregon Territory, right? This is before statehood, right?
Yeah, and even before, yes, the Oregon Territory was about the same time. Well, the Oregon Territory was established, get my years right here, in 1848. Mm-hmm. Do I have that right? I think that was right. So the trial was in 1852, 1853. So Oregon was a territory, not yet a state. Before 1848, we had a provisional government.
Right.
And so my book covers that whole period. When the Oregon first major wagon trains came out in 1843, there was no government at all.
Right.
For all practical purposes.
And in terms of the wagon train, the Oregon Trail, I know the answer to this because I saw you speak recently, but for listeners, what is your estimation of how many slaves were brought over on the Oregon Trail in total?
We will never know the exact number. I'm guessing it was fewer than 100. Mm-hmm. And so somebody might be listening to that say, oh, that isn't many. That doesn't really count, because there were 4 million black slaves in the United States in this period. But still, in Oregon...
And yet one slave is too many.
One slave is too many. In Oregon, there were any at all, given the myth of our belief about ourselves.
Right.
That's evolved over time. To me, it was quite surprising. And there was a great deal of pro-slavery sentiment, a great deal of pro-Confederacy sentiment during the Civil War. I'm writing another semi-book now on a fellow named Jesse Applegate, who disowned a daughter because she fell in love with a Confederate sympathizer, a member of the Knights of the Round Table, if that resonates with you and your knowledge of the history, was actually advocating for probably advocating for a revolt in Oregon if the South won the Civil War. Mm-hmm. And so this was reflective of a lot of the sentiment that was going on in Oregon at that time, particularly in southern Oregon, Roseburg, Jacksonville, that area.
And this Applegate, is this Jesse Applegate of the Applegate Trail?
Of the Applegate Trail.
Of the Applegate Trail.
Best known for the Applegate Trail, but should be better known for his resistance to slavery in Oregon.
Right. And about that sort of affinity that some politicians early on in Oregon had for the Confederacy, my understanding is, you can correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that didn't the Oregon Democrats walk out in solidarity?
True story.
Is that true?
1860, when...
At the convention?
Yeah, the convention. The Democratic Party was being split between northern and southern branches, and you had the northern branch. I'm gonna miss the name of the name that I want, who became the Democratic candidate for president, and then there was a rump Democrats from the South. This was convention was held in Baltimore, I believe, in 1860. Get my years right. And so the Southern group were not accepting of, sorry, I'm not remembering his name, were not accepting of him as a candidate, so they broke off. And they nominated their own candidates. And who walked out with them but the Oregon delegation? And I think the California delegation too, if I'm not mistaken. That, what was going on in Oregon was also going on in California. You really can't separate the two in that period. So they nominated for president John Breckinridge of Kentucky and Joseph Lane of Oregon, Oregon's first provisional government, first territorial governor, first U.S. senator, became a nominee on the Confederate ticket for vice president.